Okay, everyone, places, and action.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
You talking to me?
Here, looks like you boys have seen a lot of action.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. Why so serious?
I am serious, and don't call me Shirley.
This is the Cinema Plus podcast, brought to you by More Movies. Hello, and welcome to episode 8 of the Cinema Plus podcast, brought to you by moremovies.co.uk. I'm David Roberts, and I'm joined by my friend and colleague Greg Fisher, as we use this first series to take a look and discuss some of our favourite films of all time. In this episode, I've selected Liar Liar, the American fantasy comedy film directed by Tom Shadyac in 1997, starring Jim Carrey, Justin Cooper, Maura Tierney and Jennifer Tilly. The plot follows Fletcher Reede, played by Carrey, a fast-talking attorney and habitual liar. When his son Max blows out the candles on his 5th birthday, he has just one wish, that his dad will stop lying for 24 hours. When Max's wish comes true, Fletcher discovers that his mouth has suddenly become his biggest liability. The film is a great example of 90s comedy, with Jim Carrey at his best, clowning around on screen. Packed with laughs from start to finish, this heartfelt family comedy is a great way to spend a couple of hours. Before we jump in and discuss the film, here's a clip of an interview with Jim Carrey talking about what it's like on the set of a comedy film.
We have fun. It's just, it's a constant. I mean, that's the important thing about it. I think it translates to the screen, especially for a comedy. I mean, if you're doing a serious drama, if you go down to the set of The Boost or something like that, they're all sitting around going, how can I hate myself? I've just got to find that self-loathing, that kind of thing. It's always like that. But comedy, the atmosphere of the set translates onto the film, I think.
So there we go, Liar Liar. Bit of a wild card thrown into the mix.
Alrighty then.
Alrighty! We've just watched it. What do you reckon, Greg?
Well, yeah, it's a classic. Obviously, I've seen it quite a few times before in the past. Being it was a big movie at the time. Jim Carrey seemed to be riding high at that point. That could do no wrong, apart from with those that can't stand him and hate his guts, of course. He was the man on top, and yeah, I mean, it's what's not to like. It's kind of a classic comedy, in that sort of sense of, you could imagine it was originally done in the 1930s. It's got that kind of supernatural, his kid makes a wish so he can't lie for 24 hours. That's the kind of thing you get in some of these early dramas of Hollywood studio sort of films. It's old-fashioned in that way. It's just repackaged and brought forward and given to Jim Carrey as a vehicle. It is a vehicle movie.
Yeah, I think it was originally basically just created basically as, we want Jim Carrey to do a film, so we're going to get him a vehicle that kind of allows him to do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
But I pitch it out because for me it may be a bit of kind of sentimentality creeping in from my childhood, because I used to have this on video and watch it relentlessly, but it's one of my favourite comedies. And in my opinion, it's Jim Carrey's best performance, at least in a comedy role. And I think especially in his early career, because although I like The Mask, too fond of Ace Ventura.
Alrighty then. You see, that's my favourite one.
But for me, this is the one that kind of I enjoyed, because it was able to take those over-the-top physical comedy elements of Jim Carrey in a reality and create a drama from it, and I think that is where the humour's found in the film.
Well, talking about grounding it in reality, I always call him Jim Carrey and Cary Grant. Cary Grant, Jim Carrey. So, we've got to get that right.
Carrey.
Tomato.
Who knows?
Well, I can relate to that. It being a comfort movie of sorts, one from your childhood there. That I used to feel like that about Groundhog Day, even though that's a far superior movie. It was just one of those that I probably watched this so many times without even finishing it, because you just fall asleep. It's that kind of film. You put it on to only get so far through and fall asleep. And But I mean, my stepdad absolutely loves Liar Liar. He just thought it was like the best thing since sliced bread, and he was rolling off the sofa laughing at it. You know, all that sort of, some of the more bawdy, obvious humour in it, I suppose, like, you know, that's because you got huge jugs. That's like, oh, God. No, even now...
I just want to suck on them.
Yeah, God, yeah, you wince at that bit. 23 years later, it's like, that's a little bit wrong. But it is funny. It is still funny. And as I say, my stepdad loved it. And I was quite shocked when I went back to visit him a couple of years ago, and I said to him about Will Ferrell. I said, oh, yeah. And he said, oh, I can't stand him. He's awful. And I was kind of shocked. I thought,
really?
Yeah, I thought maybe if he was prepared to, you know, enjoy the outrageous performances like this of Jim Carrey's, he probably would also gravitate towards the mindless, infantile stupidity of someone like Will Ferrell as well. But no, he just said, oh, he just shouts all the time.
Yeah, you'd think so, because it's a similar vein, really. It's that kind of comedy.
They were kind of like the heir to the throne, in a sense, of Jim Carrey as the champion of Hollywood comedy. He got compared a lot to Jerry Lewis because of the, you know, again, the rubber-faced thing. But I always found Jim Carrey an incredibly talented individual. He can sing, he can act. You know, if he wants to be a serious actor, he can do it. He's obviously hilariously funny and spontaneous. His stand-up was brilliant when he was a young guy, and I think he was a natural progression to be, you know, take over really for me from like Robin Williams had his time as the king of comedy in Hollywood, and then the next generation it was kind of like Jim Carrey, that kind of, you know,
I think so.
Energetic humor.
Because it's the same, it's a similar thing. It's that energetic humor, and then going to do serious stuff. You know, with Carrey, you think of The Truman Show, Man on the Moon, Eternal Sunshine, stuff like that, where it's a more serious, dramatic element. And
with Carrey, I always think of North by Northwest.
I think we're in a different era there.
Oh no, it's just sorry, Jim Carrey. You were talking about Jim Carrey. I'm sorry,
Jim Carrey. But yeah, I think the great thing I think what it is for Liar Liar to me is it elevates his comedy. It gets a little bit more sophisticated because there is more adult elements in this thematically. So, some of the earlier stuff.
I find he's toned it down a bit in this, rather than if you look at something like Ace Ventura, it was so over the top, and that's when he was like a Swiss Army knife, and he was getting all the different blades and attachments out and showing you everything he could do. Whereas in this, it is a bit more measured because he has to play, you know, the archetypal dad that's failing to spend enough time with his kid, you know, and going through that rocky marriage kind of guy. So I agree that obviously it frees him to do anything he wanted with it. I'm sure he didn't hardly look at the script sometimes and just did his own improvisations. And they probably filmed 20...
I'm guessing by the outtakes, yeah.
Yeah, they probably filmed 20 takes of everything and just used the best ones. That's why it's got a gag reel at the end. But, yeah, if you haven't had a look, out of a budget of $45 million, without looking, tell me how much it made at the box office.
Unfortunately, I've just seen it.
Oh, well, at least you were honest about it. I would have said, 3 million, 300 million. Yeah. But
let's see here.
Over 300 million. Now, for a comedy, 45 million is a huge budget, and I imagine 25 million of that was probably Jim Carrey's salary, because he was commanding disgustingly huge figures like that when he was on top of his game. So, you know, that leaves 20 million for a decent little comedy drama production, because there's nothing in it that's no crazy special effects or anything like that. It's just the other stars that make it as well. But how about that? It's made 300 million. Now that shows that, my friend, is star power. And that's what we're talking. That's what we're talking about here with Jim Carrey. It's star power all the way.
Oh yeah, it's an astonishing return, really, as you say, particularly for a comedy, a kind of family comedy like this. In that era, that's an astonishing return. You know,
it's big time,
really,
big time, Bill, big time,
big time. You know, that is that's the figures for, you know, an action movie at the time, really, a blockbuster film.
Yeah, it would be interesting, actually, to look at other films in 97 and what their budget was and how much they made, because I'd estimate Liar was probably one of the top ones. And again, just because your main man, Jim Carrey, was in there. Now, another great element to it is it's got the fantastic Carrey Ells in there. I always liked him. I thought he was really funny in Princess Bride. I thought he was great in Robin Hood Men in Tights with the Mel Brooks production. Always, he's a very versatile actor. He can play it straight as well. And in this one, he's playing it a bit more of a straight kind of dweeb character. You know, the guy who's trying to muscle in on the ex-wife there. But always nice to see him.
He's a bit goofy, isn't he?
He's supposed to be. But it's always nice that he turns up, I think. You kind of feel sorry for him at the end because he just gets f***ed off. You know, it's like, see ya.
Oh yeah, the kid's more important than you. Fuck off, Jerry. You know, it's but it's a nice performance, a measured performance. You know, because he needs that foil in the film, and he plays a nice role in providing that. Really, most of the time without even being there. You know, but I think I really enjoy the kid Max, who's played by Justin Cooper, who went on to play Dennis the Menace in the movies they did, and I don't think he did much else.
What? Dennis the Menace?
Yeah.
The Americans have Dennis the Menace?
And it's terrible. It's a terrible, terrible film. But I thought he played a really...
I remember a film with Walter Matthau was in about Dennis.
Strikes Again, yeah.
But I'm not sure it was that kid. We got Dennis the Menace Strikes Again. That's not Dennis the Menace. That's just the American version. Sorry, Americans, you got this one wrong. There's the original Dennis the Menace 93. Dennis was played by Mason Gamble, and it had Walter Matthau as Mr. Wilson. I remember the kids' cartoon Dennis, but I never equated it with our Dennis the Menace from the Beano-C.
Yeah, I think they picked it up and
realised it was the same character until I'm looking at this now and it says Dennis the Menace. And looking at it, he's got the dog, he's got the next door neighbour that he makes his life hell, but it's more cutesy, it's more American. It's got a shaggier dog and a nicer guy who's the grumpy next door neighbour.
Yeah, I think as I recall, they picked it up and basically changed everything and made it rubbish. You know, compared to what we've got.
What you need to know about the British Dennis the Menace is he was a catapult-firing psychopath who had a dog that looked like a black cloud of Satan and had sharp teeth and would bite anything. And Mr. Wilson next door was a right old bastard. Gritty British realism is what we had with the Beano's Dennis. This, to me, looks like, Disney's version.
The polar opposites of British and American, isn't it?
I'm Dennis, but I'm cute, really.
But yeah, I think he didn't go on to do much else, Justin Cooper. Apparently he now works for Fox.
I'm not surprised. I personally think he's a little bit annoying.
I thought he played it quite well.
He does a good... You know what I think is most annoying about him? His stupid hair. It's like a crash helmet.
But that's every kid's hair in the 90s.
Like somebody put... Well,
my hair was like that.
It was very... that's another thing, actually. In all seriousness, that's a good point. It is a very 90s film.
Yes.
The cut of the suits, the fashions.
First thing I thought was the suits. It was...
It aged a little bit. At the time, they were like, wow, double-breasted, super cut, nicely tailored suits. Looking at them now, the style is... Yeah, it's dated.
But what I thought with that is because I was watching it, and the first thing that jumped out to me was, them suits, that everyone had them in the 90s kind of thing. But I did think, this smells of the 90s, really. But it reminded me of those other 90s, kind of comedy and family films, things like Mrs. Doubtfire and...
Oh, Mrs. Doubtfire is classic. It's absolutely... Mrs. Doubtfire absolutely is on Liar Liar.
But
I'm sorry.
In terms of the kind of, because of the fashion and stuff of the time, they kind of smell of the 90s, these films, and I think that's the charm of them.
Okay, dear, it smells like the 90s in here. I tell you who's great in Liar Liar, Anne Haney, who plays is it Greta?
Greta, the
his
secretary, yeah.
Oh, she's great. She was in loads of stuff, and I always liked her. She was a good character actor.
But I think the whole cast is really strong. Really, they all play their roles exactly as you'd expect them to be played. And they all do a tremendous job. Even the mother, Maura Tierney as Audrey, plays a fantastic role.
I tell you, who's a funny character is Samantha Cole, the one he's defending in the court case, because she's quite a horrible character. She was guilty of adultery with that big doofus with the buzz cut, and she still wins the case, and she gets the kids, and she's tearing the kids away at the end, and she's really just got loose morals. And I thought, that was a bit... Would you get that kind of portrayal these days? Would you get away with that kind of portrayal?
I think within reason, I think that's the powerful part of the film, really, because all these years later, that's the part that got me, really, in terms of I was like, oh, that is kind of, and that's the crucial, obviously the turning point for Fletcher, in terms of I love my son, and I need to go and change this. This is all wrong, kind of thing. But I think she plays that part perfectly to provide that in terms of she's the cold-hearted of the situation, really. But it's also a nice... What I enjoy in there as well is that lovely kind of analysis of the way the criminal system and the court system is set up, in terms of that she's able to get away with this on a technicality. Yeah. And, the kind of moral ambiguity of it.
Because that's what he has to do to get around the fact that he can't lie.
Yeah. But I mean, that's the great kind of crux to it.
I was weeping. I was weeping tears of pathos when that happened. So yeah, absolutely, it was heartbreaking.
It was powerful.
I'd laughed, and then I was brought to my knees crying. But how about this, right? Jim Carrey played the Riddler, and I'm not sure whether you've seen, but there's a new Batman trailer out.
Oh yeah.
And I believe the bad guy of the Batman is the Riddler. And I was going to ask you, David Roberts, whether you had seen this trailer yet.
I have.
Because it just came out the other day. What do you think about that?
I think it looks amazing. I'm really intrigued where they're going to go with it. I think it's interesting.
I mean, I had to ask you because we're both Batman fans. We both love the Nolan trilogy. You weren't so keen on Batman and Robin, which does feature Jim Carrey as the Riddler. I love that. Oh no, it wasn't Batman and Robin, was it? It was Batman Forever. Yeah. Forgive me. Slap my wrist. But yeah, Batman Forever. Did you like that one? Or was it too much for you? I can't remember what you said.
So, I love Batman and Batman Returns. Batman Forever is kind of in the middle. Half of it I love, half of it I detest. And Batman and Robin, I think, is atrocious.
Well, that's another podcast where we'll
have to dissect that.
Draw our swords and get into that one. But
I loved his performance as the Riddler.
I enjoyed Batman Forever. Oh, he was brilliant. But in this new one, we're going to get what looks like a very, very different Riddler. And yes. In fact, it looks like they've gone a little bit X-rated on this Batman.
Yeah, what I was interested by was when I saw the trailer, I was thinking they've taken the real aspects of Nolan's in terms of it feels real in terms of the setting, but then they've drawn elements from the Batman of the 90s, it feels, in some of its tonal qualities. And it looks like they've grabbed parts of the animated series and the graphic novels and gone, we just want to twist that slightly into that more kind of graphic novel territory.
Yeah. Frank Miller style Batman, it's been likened to already. Dark and gritty. I've seen a few people say they'd love to see eventually hear Joaquin Phoenix's Joker appear in this, and it's possible. It could definitely happen, but that would be an exciting thing, wouldn't it? But yeah, I thought, geez, they've really gone. I mean, they're always trying to go dark, unless it's Joel Schumacher and Jim Carrey, in which case it is a little bit more of a homage to the original 60s series, which is the Batman I love the most. Yeah. But yeah, this new one, I challenge somebody out there to make a supercut trailer where it's Robert Pattinson's new Batman and elements of Jim Carrey's Riddler in there. Wouldn't that be a good fun mashup trailer to watch?
Oh, that'd be fantastic. That would be fun to watch. I love anything
In
like that.
In fact, if Jim Carrey returned as the Riddler now and did a different portrayal of him, obviously not with the ginger buzz cut and the lycra suit like Joel Schumacher had him in, but imagine him in this kind of treatment, dark and grisly, but still maniacal. I think that'd be cool. I think it's Colin Farrell's playing him this time, though.
Yeah, and he's putting a lot of weight to play him as well. It looks very... he's the Penguin, isn't he?
Is that him? Is that the guy?
He's actually the Penguin, sorry, isn't he?
Who? Colin Farrell?
Yeah.
Oh, right. I thought it was the Riddler. Because the Riddler is the bad guy in it, isn't he? And let's face it, the last great Riddler we had was Jim Carrey. Oh, yeah. Oswald Cobblepot, the Penguin. Didn't even know he was in it. Paul Dano is the Riddler. There we go.
There we go. There.
That makes sense. Bring back Jim Carrey, I say. Maybe in this DC Universe mad multiverse thing they're doing, Jim Carrey will return as the Riddler someday. Because apparently they're putting Michael Keaton's Batman together with Batfleck into one of those multiverse DC crazy fiascos. That's
not sure what I think about that.
Sweeping the nation. I like superhero stuff. I like the MCU. I like some DC stuff too. I like Judge Dredd, good old British comics. But I draw the line at some of that stuff. I just haven't got the time. I'd rather watch movies, to be honest. And I mean, some of it's probably good. I know that they brought Brandon Routh back as Superman, which I thought was nice because he only had that one turn in Superman Returns, and I thought he was worthy of a couple of Superman films, even though he was a bit of a doppelganger for Christopher Reeve, who is Superman.
Superman!
You're not a Superman fan either, though, are you?
I'm not.
You're not.
I mean, I think we should definitely do it. We should do a show covering some superhero stuff. I think that would be interesting debate.
I think it'd be fun because you can put me right on a lot of things there. I imagine I could learn a lot from you in a conversation like that.
But talking of fun, I mean, that's to me what Liar Liar is, really. It's just piles and piles of fun, and I just sat there I watched it again the other day, and I was in fits of laughter all over again. And there's many elements I'd forgotten all about because there
was loads of jokes I'd forgotten, and they did make me laugh again. And they are funny.
There's the obvious scenes that are dead memorable that remember from all them years ago, like the scene with the pen, which is just physical comedy at Jim Carrey's best for me. Where he's wrestling with the blue pen, trying to say it's a red pen, and he destroys his office in the process. And
that, to me, though, Bruce Campbell did that in the Evil Dead when his hand got possessed and he had to chop it off and it becomes the chainsaw. I thought, Jim Carrey can do it. He's good at it. It's classic clowning, really, isn't it?
Well, that's what it's based on, isn't it? It's the old kind
of... It was fun.
It's kind of old vaudeville humour.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't want to come down hard on Liar Liar because it is a worthy comedy, and it's also a bit of a courtroom film, isn't it?
Yes.
In the grand tradition of all good courtroom films, that's what it basically turns out to be. And I tell you who's great, the guy who plays the judge.
Oh, he's fantastic. Really menacing.
Jason Bernard, Judge Marshall Stevens. He is cool. I don't know if he's menacing. He seems like the most laid-back, super cool, funky judge you'd ever want to get, but he gets pushed to the point of, losing his shit with Jim Carrey's character because he's just like, I will hold you in contempt.
I hold myself in contempt.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just full of those great lines, isn't it? And I think that's what I enjoyed. And for me, still, I watched it again, and the best scene, it's the scene I remember the most from back in the day. And you remember parts of it, but watching it again is such a joy to kind of jog up on it. Is when he's in the room roasting the owners of the company, the board.
The boardroom scene.
Yeah.
And that is a good one.
Absolute delight. Just has me in tears every single time,
Simmons is old. He never goes home because he hates his wife. Some funny stuff in there.
Good.
And I love the guy who plays his face. It's a good chance for us to test our
censorship.
Yeah.
He's a pedantic, pontificating, pretentious bastard.
Mr. Allen, that's it. He's Mitchell Ryan.
He's
plays
brilliant,
isn't
isn't
he?
he?
Yeah,
And an absolute
very funny
as well, like a total cock, and that's.
Oh yeah,
But perfectly.
He
played.
is a cock, but of all the cocks you've ever seen in a movie, he's one of the more likable cocks. He's a nice cock, as opposed to a really nasty cock. It's not like he's got spikes on him or anything like that. He's kind of, he's laughing. I love a good roast. It's like, Gordon Gekko would have just, or Mr. Burns even, excellent, just press the button and...
That's interesting though, because I think a lot of the characters in the film aren't very likeable in a way.
Especially Fletcher. Fletcher's not supposed to be likeable.
No. In fact, the only kind of...
At the same time, he is, because he's funny and he's Jim Carrey, and it's like...
it kind of, to me, like the only likeable characters, really, throughout most of the film are the mum and the kid and his receptionist.
I hate to say it, but a film like this that I enjoyed more, and I do hate to say it because I'm really not a fan of Mel Gibson, but if you remember a film of his called What Women Want...
Vaguely.
Basically, he becomes this like mind reader. He can basically tell what everyone's thinking because he has this... He trips in the shower, basically, and has an electric shock, and that's the thing in that this magic, supernatural thing that happens. But apart from the ending of that film, which was atrocious, I actually enjoyed that more, in some ways, as a connivance than Liar Liar, because, it's hard for me not to enjoy it because I do enjoy Jim Carrey's performance so much, and it is a funny film, but if I was to really seriously sit down and pick holes in it, there's loads to be picked in this one, I think. But, someone could slap me in the face with $300 million and say, shut the fuck up, dude, we've made a lot of money on this. Then, yeah, I would have to eat my words, but I just don't think it's his best film. But I totally dig what you're saying about it. If I'd watched it at that certain time and it was just the movie of movies, then I'd love it a little bit more too.
Yeah, I don't think it's his best film. I think he's done other films that are better. Things like Truman Show and Man on the Moon, for me, are better films.
Oh, yeah.
But in terms of his comedy films, this is my favourite. And I think it's his strongest. And I think it is just that kind of...
Well said.
Relentless grounding in some kind of reality. It's a great comedy that allows him to do all his physical stuff, but restrains him a bit so he doesn't go too far, because that's what I felt in things like Ace Ventura, that he goes too far and loses the idea of the film. It kind of stretches beyond what is there and kind of takes you away from some of it, and it keeps him in a box a little bit, but also has a good story and has a good heart to the film. And I think that's important in especially family comedies, that you need that kind of emotional grasp, and it is in there and you feel it. And I think this is the film that started to mature Jim Carrey as a performer in terms of getting to grips with the dramatic side of cinema and going, okay, he got to grips more with the dramatic elements and the themes of this, and did fantastic at it.
Yeah, well, that's very well said, and a great defense for your love of the film. And I agree with you that you could put this in a category with things like Bruce Almighty or Yes Man, where he is playing a bit more of an everyman and not playing some kind of lunatic or some kind of superhero or some kind of moron or whatever it is that he would have been known for in things like Ace Ventura or Dumb and Dumber or The Mask. So yeah, it started to mature him. I mean, he almost wanted to make that transition, didn't he, when he did Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and he wasn't funny, and he was just going to be... I don't really feel that someone that is that overtly funny can necessarily just switch over like that.
No, because, I mean...
And be as successful. But, of course, Robin Williams did, and he was brilliant in serious parts, where I don't think Jim quite has that same...
He's not to the level Robin Williams is.
Same ability as Robin Williams, no.
No, not at all.
It's a shame, but...
Because he can go so far. Eternal Sunshine's very good. When he did something like Lemony Snicket soon after that, which was a little bit more serious.
Yeah, but that was still going back to... it was he was playing several... Or he was playing a character that impersonated a lot of different characters, so it gave him a chance again to be very silly.
But there's kind of the darker elements.
I tell you what the best performance for that kind of thing he did, I think, was The Grinch.
Yes.
He was brilliant in that. The Grinch That Stole Christmas.
But then he went and did
even
that.
Even though I'm a little bit old for that, it's still become one of my favourite ever Christmas movies.
That's a show talking about our favourite Christmas movies. But
yeah, that's coming soon.
But he then went on and did that. If you remember, the number 23.
Yeah, I was trying to remember what that was. I was going to mention it in passing with that. After saying about Eternal Sunshine, he did that kind of horror movie, but I never saw it.
It was atrocious.
That's
and I think,
probably why I avoided it.
And I think that was kind of the point of us, where it was like, you can go halfway, Jim, but you can't go all the way, and you're not good enough for it, So
you are not Freddy Krueger.
He found out his limits, so he can get. I think when it's more like when it's drama in terms of
divisive
family drama,
he is divisive. Some people can't stand him.
Yeah,
I've always been a fan. I've always laughed at him. I always found him funny. He is constantly on that edge of going too far, of course, like Robin Williams was as well sometimes. But at the same time, that's where you get the real genius stuff, like his hero, Andy Kaufman stuff. It's just really close to the bone, crazy, almost avant-garde surrealism sometimes. But I've always been a fan, but I've known a lot of people as well that just,
Yeah, I know a lot of people that don't like him at all. My mum's not a massive fan at all, and divisive. But I guess it's whether you're into that kind of, because he's so well known for the slapstick comedy and the physical humour. It's whether that's your thing, I think. And if that's not your thing, you're not gonna enjoy him at all, really, because that's.
Well, when I first saw him, I found him doing stuff that I'd never seen before, and whether he borrowed it or not, I'd never seen some of the stuff he'd done before, and it did make me giggle. I do enjoy a good laugh. I do enjoy a good belly laugh and laugh out loud sort of scenarios. And Jim Carrey's just one of those comedians that has the ability to catch you off guard and crack you up. For me personally, other people more prefer something a lot more pan-faced sort of Stonewall kind of.
I mean, I enjoy it all. I'm a bit of a comedy connoisseur, as I like to say, and
you are.
I like.
You're a well-rounded comedian.
That's it. From the dry to the physical, I like a bit of everything. But it's just whether it's good or not. That's always the key. But I think a film like this is.
I don't think he's done many shit films, and this isn't a shit film.
No, not at all.
It's not his best film.
What's great with a film like this is, and what's great about like a Jim Carrey comedy, really, when it's packed with so many jokes, and there's not many couple of minutes in this film that go by without jokes in it. It is packed to the rafters with gags, all the way through, and that's what keeps you laughing and going through it. That a lot of the other stuff can almost be forgiven, even though it's got quite a good story. You can forgive it not being the best story in the world because, hey, this is a comedy film and we're making you laugh. And that's ultimately the aim of it. And it's still shot nicely, it's got a great cast, they all perform well, and the story's tight enough to keep going. Is there criticisms of the overall structure? Of course there is. There's things that could have been done better. There's maybe things we look back on 20 years later and we go, is that tasteful, looking in the mind's eye in hindsight? But ultimately it's one of them. If you're watching a comedy film and you spend 2 hours laughing a lot, especially belly laughing, and I was belly laughing and chuckling away all through it, then clearly it's done exactly what it was meant to do in the first place, and
just give you a good laugh. It's a good social film. Lots of you can sit around and have a good old giggle, and that is what it does best.
And I think that's the difference between
very well.
Kind of, there's a difference to me between something that's critically good, and that's the more kind of technical aspects of it. And I don't think this is critically good. And then there's the kind of really good, enjoyable films, and they're kind of the ones that become our favourites. I always think, and this is that.
Sure.
And that was proved at the box office day, being able to make $300 million, it clearly took people by storm, and was thoroughly
That was
received.
You went to see it 200.
I did. I was there every day of the week. Interestingly, though, when I remember I was sitting there watching it, and I'd say I haven't watched it for a fair few years now, so I was kind of re-watching it, and the first thing that popped into my head after we were talking in the last podcast really was, I was like, do you know what, this is a bit like the scenario for a Twilight Zone episode.
Oh, yeah.
And I was thinking,
here he goes again.
I know, right? It keeps on coming up. But interestingly, I was reading through some research, after watching the film, ready to record this, and apparently critics were noting that it's got a lot in common with an episode of The Twilight Zone called The Whole Truth. And the plot of that is like a used car salesman comes into the ownership of a car that's haunted, and so long as he owns the car, he can only tell the truth. And but then it kind of brings into that scenario of like, is it really knit from that? Because it's quite a common theme, really. It's not the most original idea in the world.
Well, I don't think it has to be.
No.
It is a fantasy comedy. There's that element that, it's the little boy he wishes his dad can't lie. Like there was a film, do you remember Big with Tom Hanks?
Oh yeah.
And
Classic.
he goes to the carnival as a little kid, and there's this machine, that's like predicts the future, and he makes a wish on it, and he wishes he was big, and the next day he wakes up as Tom Hanks. So it's the same sort of thing. Obviously, he has to go back to the machine at the end to turn back into a kid, but these kind of things, we're just asked to accept them. We're not supposed to be too cynical and say, "Come on." We're just supposed to go with it and enjoy the ride, and that's good. That's good enough for me with this one.
And the same thing really with Yes Man, which was Carrey again, and actually the same director in Tom Shadyac.
Yeah,
and I think he did
Tom Shadyac.
And I think he did
Tom Shadyac. Tom Shadyac.
I think he did Bruce Almighty with him as well. And
did he? Yeah. Well, there you go. I said it was in that same sort of vein.
But I think those scenarios,
because that's an old idea as well. The guy who was sort of been given the powers of God. It's that old-fashioned kind of film that they used to make in the 30s and stuff.
It's the kind of thing that people criticise sometimes, I think, where they go, "Oh, it's unbelievable premise" or something like that. But you kind of go, "It's exactly that, isn't it?" You kind of go, "Well, just so that let it go."
Most films are,
Yeah.
Most films. Look at Batman. We were just talking about, the rich orphan who becomes some sort of vigilante in a darkened city full of colourful characters. That's is absolutely ridiculous. So this is the one sphere we can get away with stuff like that, fantasy. The more you want to go into it, the better. In some cases, and in some cases, the less you go into it, the better. And this is one of those where just get on with it. The kid's made a wish. You can't lie. Now let's have the laughs. Next thing, he's coming out the elevator, calling poor guy fat, shaming that one guy, calling the other one ugly, who's got the hair, and there you go. Everybody's rolling in the aisles, having a good old laugh at the expense of everybody else in the workplace.
There's that element though as well, I think, of it's quite interesting in that particular scene where he walks down the corridor and he's basically saying what he's thinking to everyone, and it's like,
yeah,
he's saying what everyone thinks to people. People always talk about in life you should be truthful and honest, but the reality is, if we were truthful and honest, it would usually be quite hurtful a lot of the time, in certain aspects.
Yeah, but we got to remember as well, by the end of the film, the person he has changed into and become is a better person, so that even if he couldn't lie, when he see those people in life, he'd compliment something nice about them, or he'd choose to say something uplifting rather than being cynical and criticising somebody's weight or hairstyle or whatever. So I think there's that element of it as well. Like we discussed, Fletcher's not really the nicest person.
No.
He's got this nice wife and this nice kid, but he's estranged from them because, not just because, he spends a lot of time in work, but because he's a bit of a sleazy defense lawyer, isn't he? He gets people off, lets criminals get away with it. It's all implied at the start, and he's successful for it. But at what cost? Cost him those that he loves the most. And in that sense, it is a classic story, and it's
a morality tale
story.
Again.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be. That's the point of all stories. They give us a moral.
But I think it just gives a good eye, just at a slant in terms of there's a need for some surface dishonesty in life, to not
absolutely
offend people, to not upset people, to try and be nice and positive, requires you to not say certain things, and
sure.
And I think that's an interesting kind of philosophy that's just
mildly
explored.
That's what he does beforehand, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Before he can't lie, that's what he's doing to them. He's kind of like,
you look terrific,
telling them what they want to hear, and then suddenly when he can't do that, it's done for comedy value, obviously, and it is funny, but it's like like we said, there's a lesson to be learned in it all. And maybe as a youngster watching that is a good kind of film to watch in terms of these lessons do sink in, don't they?
Yeah, I think so. I think, and that's why I think these films have got longevity and they stand out, and you can go there. You can respect them because they're funny and entertaining and all that, but I think there is good values in it and there's good morals in it, and it is a nice tale in the end, which I think works.
Absolutely. Well, I rewatched it as well, having not seen it for a few years, and I don't rule out watching it again at some point in the future because it's good fun. So yeah, it's cool with me. I'm a Jim Carrey fan. I like him.
We're fans of Jim, old Jim. He must be knocking on now. How old is he?
Oh, he's only about 50 odd.
58. That's old.
Well, old is always relative, of course. To a 90-year-old, he's still a wee whippersnapper.
He's a whippersnapper. So yeah, I mean, I think that's the main thing, is that the film is fun, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
And that's all you can ask for from this type of film. But there we go. So after rewatching it all these years later, and I've picked this one out. So what would you give it as a rating, do you reckon?
This time, because obviously I've already seen it, I've already filled it in on my IMDb watch list and given it a rating. I would, after our conversation here, like you to guess what I gave it out of 10.
I'm going to guess a 7.
Oh, bullseye. Oof. You got it spot on. That's what I gave it. 7 from me.
I think...
What about you?
Yeah, I think I would give it a 7 as well.
Yeah. It's a strong 7.
I mean, it's a really strong 7, a really enjoyable film.
But to give it an 8 may,
Yeah, I don't think it's
a step too far.
Yeah, I don't think it's critically good enough to reach that. Because that's when you start getting into the films that are technically a lot more superior. But I think it's a nice 7. Because it's a really enjoyable film.
Yeah, it's worthy of that.
So yeah, I just think it's exactly that. It's a really strong comedy. It's Jim Carrey. To me, it is comedy finest on film. Really, I think this is where he's strongest. It keeps that balance in between. It's a family film, but it's a bit more adult, and it's a bit more serious and grounded. I think this elevates him into what the kind of big status. This is when he really became the Hollywood go-to guy. Really, this plonked him into things like the.
He was on top. He was on top at this point. Yeah, I'd say as a final thought that I think it's, if you wanted to check out Jim Carrey, this has to be one of the films that you watch. Of all the films he's done, this is in his top 5.
Yeah,
this is definitely in his top 5. You'd want to check this out.
Absolutely, packed with jokes, full of laughs, and who can forget?
I tell you what it is. It's a good film to watch on a Sunday and have a few beers.
On a Sunday? Of course. Enjoy it with the kids.
I just thought I'd say I thought I'd say that for you because you forgot to this time.
Always fluffing.
Yeah.
But it's really great. It's got everything, and it's even got the claw.
It's got the claw, yeah. Oh my god.
The claw.
That's a bit sad when that shows you how good Carrey Ells is. That when he tries to do it, it's a disaster. But that's how good an actor he is, that he can do it, so it's a disaster.
That is a really funny moment when he's, it's the claw. He's gonna get you. The claw. It's really daft. But yeah, there we go.
You can't do it like Dad can.
My dad's better than you. My dad's older than you. And he is in the end.
Yeah.
But there we go. Liar, liar. Really enjoyed watching it again. It was a real kind of trip down memory lane, really, this time.
Me too. It was good fun. Always good fun. Always a giggle.
And so
one of my favourite bits, actually, before we go, I'll just say, is from the outtakes where he screws up that piece of paper and goes, "A goose." That always makes me laugh.
Well, that's a whole other fantastic element of the film. The gag reel at the end is just as funny as the entire film. Really, it's
It's pretty
Packed
good.
with stuff.
Maybe we should have our own gag reel at the end of this episode because we've been plagued with technical difficulties. I'm sure there's a few things we can procure to tag on to the end.
That's it. We'll just put it at the end.
In the spirit of the film.
In the spirit of the film, go. There we go. Well.
Okay, sir.
So that's it. We've been watching Liar Liar, and I've been Dave Roberts, and I've been joined by Greg Fisher.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Hope you've enjoyed listening along with us, and if you want to laugh, and you haven't seen it or haven't seen it in a long time, go watch Liar Liar again. It's really good fun.
And just before we go, shout out to our favourite Twitter friends, Skip Bolden, Tico Romeo, Liam Jackson, and all the film Twitter crew.
Hi guys! Yeah, go check it out on Twitter. More Movies 4. It's all going on there. That's where you can find our latest news, and we really enjoy you joining us on there. So there we are. That's it for this episode in our favourite films collection. It's been David Roberts talking with Greg Fisher. I hope you can join us again for another Cinema Plus podcast. In the meantime, be sure to check out some of our film reviews and articles over at moremovies.co.uk, and come say hello to us on Twitter at moremovies4. Thank you for joining us, and as promised, here's a selection of some outtakes just for your amusement.
It's all right, yeah, that's it. We can cut back in.
Yeah.
I tell you, the character of Miranda, I felt, was a little bit... She's quite a harsh character, isn't she? She's cut to be this...
Miranda?
Sorry?
I thought you were talking about Samantha Cole. The one in court?
Jennifer Tilly, yeah, is Samantha.
Samantha Cole.
Yeah, I was getting...
Yeah.
Right, let's just go in again. I tell you...
Where he roasts all the members of the committee.
Lost you for a minute there.
Oh, hold on a second.
Well, folks, we have a technical difficulty at the moment. Mr. Roberts is busy on another line. This leaves me, Greg Fisher, to take on the podcast by myself. So far, we've been talking about the Jim Carrey film Liar Liar, which came out in 1997. And, it is a really jolly good laugh.
Hang in there, baby.
Oh, you're back. We're back.
We're back. We're back in the room. Then at this point, we'll cut into the outro section.
I mean, it's disgusting of us not to know this stuff. We're coming in unarmed. We haven't even got guns. We're not firing any facts. But, who cares? It's Liar Liar. It made a lot of money. It's Jim Carrey. What's not to love?